Here we go.
All right, I'm Bryce, this is Louis. We're here on behalf of Gazelle Sports and the Gazelle Elite Racing Team, here to talk a little bit about our spike selection at Gazelle Sports. So here at Gazelle Sports, our staff are very well trained to kind of talk about all these different spikes and make sure we're getting athletes in the right fit based on their skill level and their level of how long they've been involved in the sport of track and field, and really just take care of student athletes. That's kind of something we're passionate about. Both of our owners have been student athletes in the past. So yeah, we're total spike nerds and shoe nerds, and so we're excited to jump into these things and talk a little bit more about spikes. So
We're both distance runners for Gazelle Elite Racing Team, but we've tried on all of these spikes before, and we are really excited about some of the 2020 updates. Each brand kind of came out with something new and improved this year. We're super excited about it. Come in and stop in, and we'd love to fit you for some spikes.
first up, we have from the sprint category, we have the Nike Rival S. This is one we would usually recommend for like a freshman, sophomore, somebody who is definitely going to specialize in like the sprint events, but is still trying to find where exactly they fall in that category. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, totally. You can go with the Rival S, but if you wanted to crank it up a little bit more to more of like an elite spike, Nike's Fly is specific to the 200 is what they recommend on their website, but the biggest difference that you'll find when you put it on your foot is just that massive extended spike plate. So now you're just getting way more aggression out of it. It's going to pop you up on your toes. You're also, it markets at 125 as opposed to 65 for the Rival S. So you should really notice a difference underneath your foot and over the top of your foot as well. It's just going to be a superior spike.
Yeah, they're doing a lot more with that 3D printed spike plate too, which is pretty cool. They've got a few more spikes under there as well. But one that we haven't had for a while is the Saucony Spitfire. So this one's going to run a little more parallel to kind of a Rival S, maybe a little more aggressive. I felt like that spike plate was a little more stiff, so somebody who is really kind of leaning towards those shorter distance or wants something more aggressive, this would be a good one in opposition to the Nike Rival S. So this is the Saucony Spitfire.
That upper is really comfortable as well. I feel like that spike balances a good amount of comfort and like control and speed as well. Adidas also dropped their new Sprint Star with a brand new upper. So it's just a little less like tidy now. They kind of made it a little more rugged at the top. I like the look of it. I don't know what you think, but the spike plate at the bottom is pretty well the same. It extends all the way back, just like most of the entry-level sprint spikes. This is designed to rival the Saucony Spitfire as well as the Nike Rival S. Still marketed at $65.
So, New Balance SD 100 Sprint Distance 100. So they kind of market this guy as more of like that 100, maybe a little bit of 200 if you're running indoor track. This would be a good one for like the 60. I don't know if any of these would necessarily be the most ideal for like hurdles because they don't have a ton of heel underneath them. Maybe like a high level hurdler, but the Sprint Distance 100 SD 100 from New Balance. This one has this nice sock liner on it. I really like the fit on New Balance's that full like sock upper. I think it just fits really well and super clean. It's a little bit less aggressive. That spike plate only comes halfway back as opposed to like that 3/4 or full that we see on some of those other ones. So New Balance SD 100.
The big thing that particularly Nike is dropping lately is more specific spikes to their event. So Fly is definitely that like 200 spike, maybe some 100-meter action, but they also came out with a 400 specific spike. So similar to the Fly with that 3D printed full spike plate, it's just not going to be quite as rigid because they understand that you're not going to be quite up on your tippy toes the entire time. But if you are trying to work, if you're trying to focus in on the 400 and really specify your training and your racing there, the Nike Zoom 400 is a outstanding shoe specific to that event. We have seen some Nike elites run the 800 in this spike as well. So if you're fast enough in the 800 and you want a really aggressive spike, this is going to do great for you. But it's $110. So if you're focusing on the 400, grab that one.
Yeah, that's one that would be kind of a little better for the hurdles. It has a little bit of that cushion underneath there.
That's true.
So a lot of hurdlers, especially at like a little lower levels can't necessarily stay up on their toes the full 300 hurdles or even 110 hurdles. So getting a little bit of cushion for that heel can definitely protect your body when you're going through those hurdles. So another new one for us, this is the ASICS Hyper Sprint. So this is one that's actually, they're doing it in collaboration with the Olympics. So American flag color is kind of cool. I actually haven't had a chance to put this on, but it looks really clean, looks really good. It's definitely going to be a little more aggressive, but one that still is going to work for pretty much all levels, from somebody who's kind of at the top tier, but also kind of a younger track and field athlete. So this is ASICS Sprint Hyper Sprint 7.
I'm pretty intrigued by this spike because the upper is something that we haven't seen in many other spikes. It's a bit more traditional. It's almost like it's like really smooth, and it's pretty thick, so it's designed to lock down your foot a little bit better. Most of the other sprint spikes are this lightweight mesh that you see as we progress up in distance, but this is a much more traditional kind of like classic look, and I'm really into it. I really like it, and they do label Tokyo on the tongue as well.
Especially for those sprints, having everything locked down, not to waste any power.
For sure.
Good touch. So those are sprint spikes for us. So one thing that we definitely see a difference in what makes a distance spike different than a sprint spike and a jump spike and all sorts of other things is going to be in this spike plate here. So what we've got here is kind of a mid-level Nike distance spike. So you can kind of see that spike plate stops right there. Really, it's going to have a little more cushion underneath there, and it's going to have some traction, but if you compare it to this high-end Nike sprint spike, kind of designed for the 100 and 200 meters, it goes all the way through there, so that's going to make it a little more aggressive. If you kind of also look at it here, this guy kind of puts you up on your toes, whereas this one really kind of puts you up there and forces you up on those spikes, and is going to ultimately result in more power, whereas this one's going to be a little more comfort-oriented.
Think about your foot in there as well. If you have a really aggressive and full-length spike plate, if you're up on your toes like this, the way that your foot is going to move is going to bend and then flex. The spike plate is designed to bend with your foot and then sort of like thrust you forward. Mm-hmm. So on a really aggressive sprint spike like this, it's meant to keep you up on your toes for not a sustainable amount of time. You're talking like 10, 20, 30 seconds kind of deal. If you do this, if you wear a spike like this over the course of 10 minutes for like a 2 mile, for example, you're asking for big trouble in terms of calf injuries and Achilles stresses and stuff like that. Yeah. So keep in mind that the distance spike is just designed to be a little bit more safe over the course of a period of minutes rather than seconds.
Yeah, generally a good rule of thumb, whether it's distance or sprint, we go for more aggressive for people who have been running track and field and kind of specialize a little more, and we go a little less aggressive for somebody who's maybe a little newer to the sport. So, because they all range in different aggressiveness, if that's a word.
Aggressiveness?
Yeah, whatever it is. But so we'll dive into that here a little more in a second.
Here we have our middle distance spike. So we've bumped up. When we talk about middle distance, we're talking about probably like the 800 up to maybe 2 mile, but we more specify like that 800 mile kind of range.
Depending on the spike, for sure.
Definitely, depending on the spike, and that's what we're here for. So New Balance has released their MD 500 update. This is what we would describe as like a multi-use spike. So if you're running a middle distance event, 800 kind of mile, this is a great entry-level spike for you, but when we talk about that spike plate, how it only comes down to about halfway through the spike as opposed to the full length for the sprint, it does, when the spike plate stops, we can now include some cushion on the end there. So the cushion is designed to be used over a couple more minutes of running. It can also be used for hurdles. This is kind of your do-it-all spike. So if you're entering a track season, you're kind of unsure about what you'll maybe be focusing on, the MD 500 by New Balance is a great option for you, for sure. If you do want to specify, then we can bump up to a more premium specific option.
Yeah, so the premium version of the MD 500 is the MD 800. So 800 is right in the name. This is kind of the bread and butter 800 meter spike. That spike plate, although it's not as aggressive as some of the sprint spikes, it is going to have a full length spike plate that just bends and flexes a little more. This full like sock like upper fits really well. I am a big fan of the way this the spike fits.
And
but
you hate the 800.
And I hate the 800. But yeah, this has been a great update from New Balance. They didn't change a ton on it, but this is great for somebody that's maybe a junior, senior, kind of pushing to take that next step in the 800 meters and 400 meters as well. So MD 800.
The same way that we frame kind of the entry-level, do-it-all spike from New Balance, and then the premium, more specific spike in that middle distance range from New Balance, Nike has a similar kind of tier system. So the Zoom Rival M by Nike is essentially their version of the MD 500, where there's a decent spike plate on the bottom that's designed to kind of carry you through a variety of distances, but it still includes some cushion on the back there. So that classic kind of just classy swoosh look. It's got a good upper in there. It does fit a little bit of a wider foot as well, as opposed to some of the more premium options that are going to really clamp down on your foot for a really, really narrow fit. This has a bit more generous fit, so if you're just someone that kind of flits between maybe a narrow and wide, it could be a good spike for you.
Alternative would be the Nike Victory. There's also one called the Victory Elite that's going to be a little more aggressive, but the Victory is kind of that high-end mid-distance spike, so you could use this for a 400. I had teammates in college that wore a spike similar to this for 400 meters, but you could also wear it for the mile, maybe even a 2 mile, depending on who you are. If you're somebody kind of at that higher level in the 2 mile, if you're not quite as versed in the 2 mile, this could be a little bit too much. But super lightweight. I believe, I could be wrong, this may be the lightest spike we have.
It is the lightest spike we have. It's like 3.5 ounces.
Yeah, it's super light. A little more aggressive than that MD or Rival M, sorry, that we had earlier. So this is Nike Zoom Victory.
It's a fan favorite for sure, and they still have that kind of 3D printed spike plate on the bottom. It's just not as aggressive as we saw in some of the spike plates.
Yeah.
But this is probably one of the most well-known spikes, most well-loved spikes for sure. A lot of the Nike pros wear this spike, and most kind of collegians and higher-end high schools will throw that guy on for sure. Mm-hmm. Last but not least, ASICS continues their line of like their Tokyo kind of release. So this is their middle distance option. Really the biggest difference is the upper. It's a little more breathable because you're going to be wearing it for a little bit longer. It's a little bit more lightweight, but it still does have a nice little like heel wedge there if you wanted to throw it in for some hurdles or for like an 800 kind of mile event. The spike plate's not nearly as aggressive, but it's 5 pins, which is kind of like right in the middle. So this is a true middle distance spike for sure.
Yeah, that's one I think is going to be really good for like the hurdles, because that spike plate is almost identical to what we see in the sprint one. You're just getting a little more padding and a little more breathability. So yeah, I think that's going to be a great one for hurdles and things like that.
We see you, ASICS. Well done.
So here we have kind of our selection of distance spikes. So these are kind of the spikes we would recommend for probably the 800 meters to 2 mile, but more specifically kind of that mile, 2 mile-ish range. So the biggest thing we're going to see in the difference in distance spikes is this spike plate, like we had kind of mentioned before. So this is the Nike Zoom Rival D. So this spike plate is going to be a full, like up here on that toe box or underneath the ball of the foot, but it has a little more cushion there. So this is going to be a great one, especially for an athlete kind of trying to find their niche in track and field. You could certainly use this for sprints if you want to try those out. You could certainly use it for a 2 mile. You could use it for really anything, and it's going to protect your body a little more. If you're somebody that is maybe a little more injury prone, having that little bit more cushion is going to be a definite plus.
And not only the cushion either, but just the aggression of the spike plate. So it's a pretty flat spike when you set it down, right? It's not going to pop you up on your toes nearly as much. Mm-hmm. And like Bryce said, you can. These are the safer spikes for sure. So if you want to wear them for like the shorter events, they'll work. They're just not going to perform quite as well. Which is why Nike starts to bump it up a little bit. So here we have the Zoom D. We had the Rival D before, now we have the Zoom D. So here we get a little bit more aggression. You're paying a little bit more for it, but you maintain that level of cushion as well. So it's just a lighter spike. It's going to have a bit more of a narrow fit and a slightly more aggressive spike plate. So it'll keep you up a little bit more. It's really not a ton of difference at all.
The biggest difference is that weight, but that one kind of runs similar to the Nike Victory, but could certainly be used for longer distances for most people. So
Nike went nuts again with the Matumbo. So this is their premium true distance spike. This is actually cited as being able to run this is like a 5K, 10K spike. So even a 2 mile, it's not gonna be quite aggressive enough for that. However, it is paperweight. This thing is under 4 ounces as well. And the rationale behind that is for the true distance spikes, the less weight you carry, the better off you are. So they've actually done studies on it, haven't they? Where it's roughly like in every ounce that you can shave off is a mile or a second per mile, roughly. So when that really starts to count over plenty of laps, 25 to be specific with this guy.
Yeah, that's one. If you're a 2 mile or distance runner, mile 800, somewhere in there, and you really have issues with whether it's stress injuries or really injuries in general, having that extra cushion, and also if you want to go a little bit lighter than like the Rival D up here, having that little extra cushion but also minimizing weight is going to be a huge plus. So that's a great spike.
And you can notice the spike plate too is still that 3D print, but it's not. They didn't even want to waste weight by filling it in with half the shoe. They just kept it around the top, just enough to kind of get you over those 25 laps as quickly as possible.
That's a great one. So this one's a little bit of a goofy spike. This is the Saucony Ballista MD. It is kind of marketed as a mid-distance spike, so kind of that 400 to mile. Similar to like the Victory, I think this is a spike that a lot of high-level high school athletes or even college athletes could use for a 2 mile. I just think that spike plate down there is just a little less aggressive than we see in a traditional 800 MD spike. So this is the Ballista, again, not necessarily for somebody that's kind of getting into track and field and wants to focus on the 2 mile, but could be a great one for somebody who runs a 400 but may also occasionally run a 2 mile or a mile or things like that. So
super lightweight too.
Very light. But it's the Saucony Ballista MD.
You want to talk about Distance Star?
Yeah. So Distance Star, this is in essence kind of Adidas's more entry-level spike. It's going to be a little bit heavier. Spike plate is going to be a little more aggressive than we see in like the Rival here, but it is still going to have a little more cushion to it. I felt like it was almost a little bit softer than some of Nike's. So if you're kind of focusing a little more on comfort, or potentially maybe want to put an insole in there, this could be a good option for you.
Similar to how many brands are kind of structuring their spike tiers, we do have an upper version, premium version. This is the Adizero Avanti. This is what you see most of the Adidas pros wearing. The big difference with this is they do make it technically like a full plate spike. That's how aggressive of a spike it is. But they combine it with their well-known Boost material. So Boost is designed to be super, super durable. It is fairly lightweight, but the biggest advantage that you get out of it is it's cushion without you sinking into it. So it's cushion that you'll sink into and then it'll pop you back up like a bouncy ball. So they layer the entire bottom of their spike with Boost material, just a thin layer of it, so that with that spike plate, now that spike plate is pretty aggressive, but it's okay. It's not going to hurt you because there's Boost that's covering it as well. So this is the Adizero Avanti. This is their definitely higher end distance spike. We recommend this for a mile, 2 mile, and you could even race like a 5K in it. You used to race quite a lot in this, didn't you?
Yeah, Adidas's spikes have come a long way. I really like that update, but that's a good one.
For sure. Finally, ASICS continues with their definitely updated spike line. So this is ASICS Gunlap. This is their distance spike. We start to see something similar to the Matumbo, where they don't waste weight by doing a full spike plate that covers most of the upper half of the shoe. But it looks like quite a durable spike as well, because not only do they have that spike plate there for performance purposes, they even throw a little bit of that extra little plastic in the back just so that you're not wearing down that just pure foam as well. Super, super lightweight, breathable upper. I actually like the color scheme too. I think that looks good, and it sets it out from their sprint and middle distance line as well. But this is pretty reminiscent of the Victory to me. This seems like ASICS Victory.
Kind of a bit of like a almost hybrid of Victory and Matumbo.
Yeah.
That's one that it wouldn't surprise me at all if somebody came in their senior year of high school and had been wearing this for all 4 years of track for whatever event. So,
totally, yeah. Looks like it'd last you a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Those are our distance spikes. So we do have some field-specific shoes as well. Nike leads the charge here. We have a couple of throw shoes, we have a long jump specific shoe, and a high jump specific shoe. So this is the first time that Gazelle Sports has carried a entry-level and a premium throw shoe. With our throw shoes, if that's all you're going to be doing, you're not also going to be running on the track. These are not that great for running. Believe me, we tried, didn't we?
Yeah, a couple times.
For the throw shoes, it's a completely different upper fit and it's a completely different kind of midsole as well. So the upper, you can lock it down with a Velcro strap here. So you can essentially tighten that as much as you want to. The toe box as well has like a guard as well, because as you're shuffling forward in that throw ring, you don't want to hit your toe on the edge of it, so they do protect you a little bit there. And then the bottom is designed for you to pivot or glide when you're throwing shot or disc specifically. Yeah. That's at $65, but we do have an upper version as well.
Yeah, so kind of the upper tier, this is the Zoom SD. Kind of everything is going to be almost identical to the lower tier model. The biggest difference is we got some fly wires in here. You probably can't see it from that distance, but the upper and the fit is just going to be a little more improved. Track meets are long. My best suggestion for you, if you're into the shot or disc, regardless of what level you're at, come try them on or try them on. I think it's well worth the $15 if this is going to be a little more comfortable for you. But if you don't really notice a huge difference, there's no reason at all you can't go more for that lower tier-esque type distance or shot put.
We did kind of experiment with them. We wanted to feel that $15 difference, and we put one on one foot, one on the other, and we definitely felt like a little bit of a superior fit on the upper end version. So moving on to some jump-specific spikes, Nike has their long jump elite spike. The biggest difference here is it's essentially a sprint spike from underneath. There's a touch of cushion there, but really it's just a super aggressive spike plate with a good number of pins in the bottom. There's like 7 pins. But you can really secure down that upper with the Velcro again, and it's designed to be sandproof, right? You don't want all those little grains getting in there. So they do have a really tidy upper fit, and then you can zip that up as well. Super aggressive long jump elite spike, valued at $100.
So high jump elite, this one, biggest difference we see in high jump spikes is it has the pins that kind of go all the way along the bottom there. So the reason for that being, a lot of times when you watch high jumpers, they kind of do a lean back and then start to move forward with a little bit of their heel. That can kind of help gain momentum, gain power as you move into your jump. So this is their big dog spike for high jump. So this is the high jump elite at $125. I think it's worth noting we don't have a pole vault spike as in addition to these. Pole vault is just such a specific event that a lot of times you can wear either a mid-distance spike or a distance spike or something else that's going to work for the pole vault. I actually haven't seen a pole vault spike in stores anywhere before. But.
Yeah, we've definitely had some pole vaulters come in who most of them prefer either a sprint or a middle distance spike, just because you can ramp up as much speed as you can going into the mat. But in terms of high jump, this is by far your best choice. And
sure.
Like Bryce said, those heel pins as well allow you not only as you approach the bar, but right as you plant as well. That's what they're designed to kind of look in for and prep you for the jump.